Crimson Tears by Adam Ward. The dust hangs in the air like small clouds. Once it begins to clear faintly, I can begin to see the outline of the crater in the ground. It's eerily quiet, but not quite at all at the same time. The high-pitched ringing in my ears drowns out everything else. I just look around in a slight daze, not fully taking in the gravity of what has just happened. I check myself. I don't see any blood. Everything is where it should be. I look back at the hole in the ground. Smoke and dust still billowing out of it. Faint mumbles are starting to break through the ringing in my ears. I can hear them now. The cries. I scan the area looking, but all I see is the aftermath. Parts of the truck thrown about, some dripping with crimson tears. The cries are getting louder now. I see his foot sticking out from the busted door. The door has been bent in half like a charred tent over him, with his foot poking out the end. I rush over towards the screams and throw the door to the side, but it isn't sheltering him. Only his boot is there. I reach to grab it, and that's when I notice the blood running out the top. There's an old desk sitting in front of a window. The sunlight is pouring through the window onto the desk, and it's slowly changing from yellow to a pinkish orange. The light highlights the scratches on the surface, with small splinters poking out of each indentation. He's sitting bent over the front of the desk, hovering across a pad of paper. Sticking out from underneath is an envelope with a name scribbled across the front. Just off to the side is a short glass, sweating beads as the ice slowly dilutes the golden brown whiskey. Chad, I'm writing you this letter because I feel like I need to give you some explanation. I don't know how to explain why I am this way and how I got to this point. All I can tell you is I'm not the same as I was before. Life seems so much more fragile now than it did before. We never really thought about anything when we were younger. We were careless as fuck, and we spent our summers climbing trees and jumping off bridges. The only thing we were worried about was how much trouble we would get into from Mom and Dad. We were invincible for all we knew, in our minds. That was before I joined, though. Before we went our separate ways. We went off to college to grow up and mature into a man. I guess I chose a different path of growing. I'm proud of you, though. You worked hard to earn your opportunity. He pauses to take a sip of his drink and gazes out the window for a moment. The clouds are hanging in the distance over the treetops. Their colors are bleeding into each other from yellow to pink to purple. I can still hear his cries as I start to make my way further through the wreckage, calling him out to him for his location. I continue trying to see through the clouds. Our platoon leader staggers in front of me, blood running down his arm. I grab him and pull him off the road. I pull open his vest to see a piece of metal embedded under the edge of his shoulder piece. I sit him down and pull his vest off. After laying him against it, I begin to cut away at his uniform to get a better look of the metal. It's jagged and it's cut deep into his shoulder. I can't remove it safely. So I just dress it and have him hold fast for the medics. I can still hear the screams. The ringing is all but gone now. I head back into the gray smoke and search for the others. I find the boot still motionless in the crimson pool. I follow the screams further until I come across the rest of him. He's propped himself up against the tire, which is laying on its side, his face covered in red and black paint from his battle. But I can still see his piercing blue eyes wide open. He's in shock, but managed to wrap his belt around his leg to fashion a tourniquet. May have saved his life. I lift him up, and he uses me as a crutch as we make our way to the lieutenant. I sit him down and go back for the boot. I can still hear the screams in the distance. We both grew up men at the same time, but we were educated in different institutions. You spent your time studying and learning how to thrive in the future. I spent my time studying how to save and take lives. I majored in staying alive today and not to worry about tomorrow. I wonder about your friends you make there in fraternities. I always wonder about the strength of your brotherhood's bond. I miss it, my brotherhood. There's no way to describe it. We lived for each other until the very end. The things we did and saw, no one can understand it, but it's us. It's who we were. I move deeper into the wreckage and cover my mouth with my neck gaiter as a mask. My eyes are burning from the fumes. The fumes engulf me. I try to listen to the cries, but they've gone faint again. I trip into the shell of what remains of the front end of the gun truck. It is just burning metal frame now. Fuel sprayed everywhere. I make my way towards the driver's side. Its door's misplaced off somewhere. Hunched over the steering wheel is the driver. He's partially blackened on his right side with cracks from red, which blood leaked. He's gone. I stand there looking and it's gone quiet again. I hear nothing. I feel nothing. I start to feel my heart sink with each beat. This is how I know I'm still alive. I slowly remove him from the truck and lay him down. I crouch over him, just taking a moment to breathe again. He's laying there badly damaged from the explosion. Though he's still intact, he was burned as the truck he's been resting in. I look up at the truck to see the crimson tears running off the driver's seat down to the floorboard. All that remains of the roof is the soot-covered frame allowing the sunlight to shine down onto his seat. It was almost like a glowing memorial to him now. He was only 18 and just arrived here 2 weeks ago. He barely knew what life was, but at least he knew our brotherhood. He was one of us. I take a deep breath and pick him up and carry him to the side. He finishes his drink with one tip of the glass, then reaches into the drawer on the left side of the desk and removes a bottle. Taking a moment to look at the near half-filled bottle before refilling his glass, he puts the bottle back down into the drawer and closes it. Taking one more sip, he returns to his pad. How close were you to your fraternity brothers? Were you as close to them as we were? When you ventured off on your own in the corporate jungle, did they fall alongside you on your flanks? My brotherhood is still there, in thought at least. Part of all of us stayed behind when we came home. It remains alive in our past, the past we all shared together. We can always find it, though. We just have to think back to it, and it immediately is there waiting for us. I guess in a way, our brotherhoods are similar. It's an unbreakable bond that we share with others who, through the influential moments of our lives with us. We can all sit back and joke about the old times. For me, at least, we try to joke. I guess that's how we learn to mask the pain. My brotherhood was more than a bond. I would do anything to protect my brothers. And I could move forward confidently knowing that the same was true for them. I lay him gently next to the others. I could tell from the expression on their faces they already knew from just seeing him. No sooner than I stood up, the lieutenant had placed his hand over the motionless chest of the driver and was praying. I don't know if it would really help anything at all, but it did momentarily lift my heart. He wasn't suffering, and maybe now he was in peace, far away looking down on us. The ringing in my ears has disappeared now, but now I hear everything. The sounds of the flame crackling, the faint whispers of the lieutenant asking, "Do you think it was instant?" I hope it was. I walk back into the smoke and dust. Once again, I hear it, the cries. I try peering through the dust clouds, but I still can't make out where it is coming from. I make my way back to the driver's seat, now vacant and soaking red. With a deep breath, I look up. I already knew what to expect. The roof is gone, and all that remains is the frame of the gunner's turret. There is no one standing there now. I grip my rifle and turn around. I know what is next. This isn't a rescue. It's just a recovery. He puts his pen down and rests his face into his hands. His ends of his elbows digging into the desk as he's holding his head up. He slowly brings his face up with his hands trailing down until they rest over his mouth. He just stares out the window. His eyes become lost into the clouds lingering over the treetops, staring intently to the now solid purple clouds as if he was watching a performance from birds swirling and dancing in the twilight sky. He reaches for his glass and takes another large drink from it. He holds it up looking at it, as if he would be able to see a message floating around in the golden brown whiskey. He places the glass down and again reaches into the drawer, removing his messenger's vessel to refill his glass. Looking at it, knowing it was completely empty soon. With a sigh, he places it back in the drawer. Do you ever wonder what happened to your brothers after all have gone your own ways? I've only seen a couple of mine since I got out. I guess the distance is a big factor. We went from living together every day, all day, and occasionally messaging back and forth to never seeing each other. I know we were still thinking about each other. Anytime one of us passes, it turns into a family reunion over Facebook or text messages. All the jokes and memories come flooding in from all over the country. It's funny how we mask the pain of loss. We all know we feel the same way, but just refuse to admit it. What would you have done if it had been me years ago, Chad? Would you have laughed and joked through fond memories, or would you stood there with your arm around Mom and Dad? Would you have put your hand over my casket and prayed? Guess only time will answer those questions down the road. I wonder all the time if it would have been easier for everyone if I'd been the one in the gun that day. I may have been gone, but someone else's family wouldn't have to be praying over a casket. He pauses to wipe a tear away from his bloodshot eyes. Looking down at the glass, he just waits, as if he were waiting for the glass to come to him. After a minute, he relents and reaches for it, the ice barely surviving as the last pour rattles against the side of the glass. He takes a sip and places the glass down. I take a deep breath and walk deeper with my rifle at the ready. At this point, I only know what I can see and hear, also from what I can remember. What I can see is hard to make out. There are small flames scattered around, causing the smoke and dust clouds to glow into deep orange. What I can hear is near silence. The whispers coming from behind me, from the lieutenant trying to reassure the others. The pops of equipment burning in faint circles of cries circling around me. What I remember, there had been small arms fired just before the explosion. The gunner calling out, 11 o'clock, but we never had a chance to respond. Then I remembered the other truck. We always go out in pairs. I turn and sprint behind my truck, or rather what remains of it. I move further and further, trying to find any sign of it. Then I see the glowing of the headlights. At first, it felt like such a relief. We weren't alone. We had support. That sense of relief left as quickly as it came. The headlights were not right. Instead of being side by side, the headlights were shining directly at me on top of each other. I run to the truck yelling, but there was no immediate responses. When I approached the truck, it was on its side. The gun hung in its mount on the roof unmanned. I run up and look through the windshield. The TC and the driver are piled on top of each other against the door. With the butt stuck in my rifle, I bang on the windshield, pleading for any type of response. I kick the roof and the truck above their heads. That's when I hear something moving behind me. I spin around, raising my rifle, to find the gunner trying to pick himself up off the ground and moaning. I rushed over to help him, and thankfully he was no worse for wear than myself. We make our way back to the truck to find the other two have woken and were crawling out of the passenger side door. They had been lucky, only minorly battered. I bring them to the side of the road with the others. Their gunner, though shaken and beaten, joins me in the recovery. You have purpose in your life. You know what you're going to do from day to day. I just feel like that's all gone now. Does that make sense to you? I'm not saying I have no worth. I just mean the drive is gone. Every day had meaning before. Everything I did had a purpose. It seems like slowly that has all faded away. I'm sure there are plenty of great purposeful things left ahead of me. But I just feel like I left my best self behind when I got out. I know it's probably hard for you to understand. Hell, it's probably hard for anyone to understand who hasn't been in my part of the Brotherhood. I don't think there's any way for them to really see anything other than the masks we wear. Us laughing and joking. My brothers are a rare breed, Chad. You face your problems in an organized manner. We are anything but organized. I swear, we just steamroll through things and assess the damage later on. More times than not, we just put that off too. He tips back the glass and swallows the last bit of chilled whiskey. He takes a moment to enjoy the smooth, cool sensation as it runs down his throat and finally stops warming his belly. He rests the empty glass against his forehead and looks out the window. The clouds are now dark blue, with breaks of fading orange peeking through. It's like the darkness is trying to mask the sun, but it refuses to be forgotten. It won't go without showing that it's still light at the end. He sits the glass down and reaches into the drawer and pulling out the bottle. Once again, pouring in to fill the glass. This time there's no ice to meet it. He fills the glass to the brim with a warm golden brown whiskey. Without thought, just recurring instinct, he replaces the bottle back into the drawer. We branch out and search for our missing brother. While he is hoping and trying to remain positive that, like himself, we'll find him having just been tossed aside and dazed and confused, I don't hold the same optimism. I've seen the truck, and I've seen the bare, burnt skeletal frame that remains. As we move deeper into the wooded border of the road, I can still hear the faint cries. I ask him if he hears the cries as well, but I alone hear them. We still find small pieces of truck strewn about the ground, so we know that we are still on the correct path. I glanced behind me, not sure why. It was like I needed to make sure I knew where I was coming from in order to find where I'm going. I turn my head back to the forward, but as my view passes over the right shoulder, I see something off to the side. The smoke and dust haven't reached that far yet, so I know exactly what I was seeing. I give a quick shout, make my way. I walk to the thick tree, which reached beyond my view. It could have reached the sky for all I could tell. Maybe even heaven. I walk to the tree and rest my head against its trunk. I look down slowly at my feet. His boots lay motionless on top of each other. He could have been sleeping, judging by how peaceful he was laying, curled up on his side while hugging the base of the trunk. He could have been sleeping and thinking about what it would be like when he gets home. He would have great stories to tell his family and get to joke about everything with our brothers. I feel a hand on my shoulder gripping tight. So much for optimism. There would be no family reunion full of celebration. He was asleep, but not really. This time he wasn't waking up. My eyes were burning again, but this time not from the fumes and smoke. The tight grip has made its way across my back and now is an arm around my shoulder and a head pressing into my neck. I can feel the stuttered breathing from his chest as he tries to hold back from crying aloud. I should have said something, maybe a small prayer. Instead we stare, our hearts sinking and chests tight. We pick him up and hold an arm over each of our shoulders. We walk with him out of the woods to the others, our brother joining us one last time. I hear it again, the crying, and again, I'm the only one that hears it. We find the others huddled up waiting. The lieutenant tells us the medics and support are on their way, and we need to set up a perimeter for security. Those of us who can walk move out. That's when I hear something ahead in the distance. A faint crying, but this time I see something also. There it is in the distance. I see something curled up on the ground, just in front of the wood line by the road. I call back for someone to cover me and I make my way to the crying. He takes a deep breath and leans back in his chair, lifting the glass to take a big drink of the warm whiskey. It's no longer chilled and the taste burns his tongue. The golden brown whiskey burns as it slides down his throat like a flame racing to his stomach. His face winces from the harsh aftermath in his mouth. He slams the glass down on the desk as he gives a deep exhale. Some of the whiskey splashes out, leaving a small perimeter of drops around the glass. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. Chad, sometimes I'm envious of you. You can go about your day and not think about things. You have memories, of course, but do you get to choose when you think about them? I wonder, do you ever come across a smell that just takes you away to somewhere else? I can get lost for days and days. It gets harder to find my way back. It sucks that you and I have grown so far apart. But I guess that's what brothers do. We move on in our lives. We only know each other in our memories. I guess all brotherhoods are like that. We can live forever in our memories. I wish we could have spent more time catching up when I got back. It's been hard for me. Sometimes I'm just left empty. I'm stuck remembering the part of me that was left behind, and how all that I have is to remember and grasp onto are the cries that I hear. Hearing the cries that no one else hears. They follow me home as a reminder of how I grew up and changed. I really wish I could explain things better to you. I guess it's like I speak a different language than everyone else these days, and there's no translation to help. It leaves me feeling lost and confused, wondering if there was anything I could do different. I wish there was a translator between our parents and me. Maybe that's why I'm writing this to you, so you can put all this in a way they can understand. He leans in and grabs the glass to take the last drink of the warm whiskey. It still burns the same as it did the last time. He sits staring at the empty glass for a minute, just gazing into the last couple drops pooled at the bottom. A solemn expression passes over his face as he puts the glass down. There was no message to be found after all. He folds the letter and places it in its envelope. Looking up at the window, he can see the golden sun is no longer peeking through the dark blue clouds. He reaches down to his drawer again, pulls out the bottle. He gives a slight chuckle as he looks at it. The vessel is finally empty, and it has nothing left to share. I slowly walk towards the curled up mass. I notice slowly rocking back and forth. The cries become louder, but now I can make out words also. They're foreign to me, but I need no translation when I get closer. Ahead, a man laying across the ground. A leg and an arm were missing. He was covered in crimson red blood. To the side was an AK-47, just arm's reach from his body. The crying was louder, and from above his chest was a young boy leaning over the man. He was rocking back and forth, crying and moaning. I needed no explanation. This was his father. I tried to figure out what to say, but I'm at a loss for the right words. I could have shown compassion or concern, but never got a chance. The boy looked up at me, his face covered in his father's blood, his tears running down from his eyes over his cheeks, turning into crimson blood covering them. In an instant, he reached for the gun and began to point at me. Compassion was no longer what I was searching for. I reached for my education and taking and saving lives. One single shot, the boy fell back. I rushed to hold him, throwing my rifle to the side. I cradled him. Still he was crying, but this time not for his father. I held the boy, who couldn't have been much older than 8 years old, trying to reassure him that it would be okay. I applied pressure to his chest wound, but the blood is running between my fingers, hoping for medics to arrive soon, but I'm not the optimist. He stares at me, with the crimson tears still running down his face, and I stare back. I feel the warmth of his blood running off his back, pulling into my lap as I continue to cradle him. I sat there holding him until finally the cries stopped, and his empty eyes were fixed on me. He sits the empty vessel down on the desk and leans the letter against it. He stands up, reaches down into the drawer one last time and finds what he's looking for. He pulls out a shiny metallic object and holds it tight in his grip. He pushes the drawer closed and walks through the doorway to his bedroom. Bang! Memories hurt, and the pain doesn't subside. Nothing helps hide the feeling inside. Cries and screams will echo through the years. No way of explaining the thoughts that you fear. Dreams are torture. Your sleep is rare. Anxiety becomes more than you can bear. Regrets will stay, leaving you with sorrow. The eternal shame will be there tomorrow. Working so hard so nobody can tell. You are living in your own personal hell. Carefully planning out each next step. Not wanting to lose what you have left. Bury the thoughts and keeping a smile. Going through motions should last a while. So memories stay and the regrets will remain. Put on your mask to hide away all the pain.